Hello and welcome back. Welcome back to Getting Healthier. When you get healthier, you get wealthier. We're back with Ramin today, and we are going to learn about something that I think everyone knows a little bit about, or they feel like they can give a little bit of advice on. And that is the whole topic of protein. Maybe not the whole topic, but enough for you to be smarter when you leave the session with Ramin. And protein, when it comes to working out, I think it gets complicated because everybody's like, make sure you eat enough protein. Everyone's like, yeah, but what's enough for you? I know when I first started working with Ramin, it was like, so how much protein do you need to eat in relationship to the goals that I want to achieve? That's a different conversation, right? And particularly for someone who, I don't eat animal protein. So where am I going to get that from? How much do I need to do, we're working on this crazy, 8 marathon plus kind of funky little party that's happening in a year as we panic. But how much do you need to do what it is you need to do? And why do we need protein? So many of us are like, oh yeah, you need to eat protein. And is it because like when I was in school, they had this nice little chart and you had to eat a certain amount from each category to feel like you had a balanced life? Is that what you're thinking? Is that kind of file popping up? Or is your buddy who works out goes, make sure you make enough protein? Like my son's like, Mom, make sure you eat enough protein. And I'm like, he's 18. He's working out twice a day. I don't know. Do I need the same amount of protein that he does? When did I have to start taking advice from my 18-year-old? When did that happen? That's how to show on that. Anyways, Ramin's going to put some of those mysteries aside and help you today with teaching you about protein. So Ramin, please let us know what we should know.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Happy to be with you in another topics and very important topic of the protein. So in the previous videos, if you remember, we talked about the role of the energy, the oxygen, water, how important those are as a few nutritions that directly related to our health and wellness and well-being. Now we are going to talk about another important topic in our nutrition, one of the most important macronutrients about protein. But before go there, I would like to catch up with the previous topic. We already talked about the energy. Speaking of the energy, the main difference, if you remember, the main difference between the living and the dead cells was the energy production. So the vast majority of the physical process in our body requires the expenditure of the energy. The cells, or more specific mitochondria in the cells, are in charge of the energy production, which is absolute requirement for growth, development, metabolism, digestion, immune system, the flight and fly, stress response, the heat generation and balance or regulations, breathing, the heart beating, all are examples of the energy expenditure in our body. But how this energy created, if you remember, we give a concept or analogy or similarity between the human body and the combustion engine in how we harvest the energy is very similar to the combustion engine because both require the existence of the oxygen. So the energy or the engine is not able to utilize the gasoline directly as a fuel. Instead, it must mix it with the proper amount of the oxygen and ignite it with the spark to create an explosion. Actually, it's the created pressure by the explosion run the engine. Same in our body. So we can use the glucose directly. We need to combine it with the oxygen to be able to utilize it chemically and harvest energy as ATP form that is a usable energy in our body. So I would like to say there is a more similarity between the modern combustion engines and the human body, like ECU similar to our brain that both control all activities. The fuel injection system like the heart or heartbeats, they both deliver the fuel and saying fuel, not gas. The mixture of the oxygen and the fuel to the system. The wiring, like the nerves. The battery, similar to fat, both reserves the extra energy for the time we need it, and so on. So, but the whole thing, the whole engine built up from the cells itself. And the protein are the building block of the cells in human body. So human body, the whole thing is built up from the proteins. Is how much is important. So we are talking about like 37 trillion cells in our adult human body. That I mentioned is like 4 times back and forth from Earth to Sun. So it's how much cells we have, and those cells are built up based on the proteins. Almost the proteins make up more than 50% because each organ is different, like muscles maybe more, in the bones maybe less, but all of them make up from the proteins in average 50 plus percent from the structure. But when speaking of the function, is over 90% of the function of the cells is based on the related to the proteins. Proteins do all the work, all the process. In each cell, you can find like several thousands of proteins that do all the job. The blueprint is in the genome, that the genome locates in the DNA of our cells. And we have like 30,000 to 35,000 genes in each cell. But the interesting point about the protein is when we're talking about the nutrition, okay, as you mentioned, eat enough protein, but which kind of protein? Okay, like animal source or plant-based or whatever, but it's not really matter the source as much as it's a high quality source. There's no big difference about the source of the protein. It could be animal, it could be plant-based, it could be something else, but the more importantly is enough amount of that, because those proteins, like the gas, would not be usable in our body. They have to go and break down in the digestion system to the amino acids. And those are building block of the proteins. So the blueprint, the formula is in the genome, in the DNA, and each cell, based on the duty they have, they're gonna combine these amino acids and build up to 300,000 proteins that our body required. It's not like 4 or 5 proteins like the animal source, different type, and the plant-based different. No. Our body build up the protein they require by themselves based on the formula of the organ. And it's 300,000 different proteins for different functions in our body. So that's the most important point.
Wow. So Ramin, can I inject in here? So if someone's not getting, so 2 questions I have, I mean, that's just phenomenal. Like how many times you're gonna travel back and forth to the sun. But so if someone's not getting enough protein, is that when people feel tired, or what happens if someone's not taking in? They don't have that fuel. They're not mental clarity. Like how can someone know they're not getting enough protein? All
of functions you mentioned and much, much more.
Right.
As I give you in the startup, almost the majority, 90% of our body functions is based on the protein. So because it's a building block, so consider all our motions, what you said, is based on the hormones. So when we are happy, when we are sad, the stress hormone, the cortisol, or the dopamine, endorphin, serotonin, the good hormones to make balance between our emotions and feelings are hormones. And hormones are built based on the proteins.
Okay.
So when you don't get enough protein, you're playing directly and indirectly with your health, physical health, mental health, emotional, everything would be affected.
Okay.
So,
okay.
Yeah.
And so the benefit for me and the benefit for anyone that wants to work with you or, work with someone of your nature, is that you can have that conversation. You can say, I mean, I've always been a big believer in coaching, whether it's business coaching, financial coaching, health coaching. When I learned how to scuba dive, I'm like, I just want one person teaching me this, because this is life or death, right? But so you have one person and they kind of know what it is that you're doing and how to raise the protein and how much protein you need. And, when you decide to take something on, or go from being sedentary and not exercising to starting exercising, or what's your body frame, what's your weight, really, all that stuff that goes on when you get to work with someone like yourself who's a personal trainer. But so I guess my question is, so if someone's feeling like that, how much should we be increasing our protein? Or how does someone just, generally may not be looking to change things, but goes, yeah, you know what, I'm not feeling as good as I should, or my emotions are out of whack, or I'm at a stage in my life where my hormones are kind of taking over, or I hear people, I'm not waking up with clarity. Like, how does someone know? Is there a general kind of rule of thumb on how much protein someone should be taking in? Or, I mean, there's been a wave. I mean, look at the market of protein shakes, protein powders, right? I mean, I had to first learn about protein powders, and now I take one and they're like, this one's better because it's got 4 different proteins and, all that good stuff. So, how does someone go about, figuring that out?
Okay. So to answer your question, I need to give you some science behind that. As you mentioned, different people, different gender, age, physical activity, and the goals they have would be different. There is a minimum maximum for intake, based daily intake, and also per meal. So I can say like minimum, half a gram per pound of weight, up to 1 gram per pound of weight. But it's like double. And how we find out where is exactly is based on the gender, is based on the age, based on the physical activity. Like athletes that doing the strength training or endurance like yourself are absolutely different than someone sedentary senior person that sitting on the bench, not much physical or mental active. So they might be more close to the minimum, and endurance athletes to the maximum, and the other people in between.
Right.
And also per meal, our body cannot absorb more than like 35 grams per meal. So it's the reason we increase the quantity of the meals per day to get that like 120, 150, or whatever required for the specific person per day. So like 120 grams of the salmon fillet, it give you around 30 grams.
Okay.
So
that's really important to know, because a lot of people go, oh man, I get enough protein because they have like a big steak at night, or they're like, I have, 2 chicken breasts with my dinner, and a lot of people will keep that big protein but that big protein intake in at dinner time, right? And you're saying that you need to be mindful of just at a certain point, that's not helping you, right?
Absolutely.
Your body's not taking it in, which is where you're talking about having those snacks in between. And yeah.
Absolutely correct. So if you say, I don't have much meals per day, but I have a very good one at the night or for lunch or whatever, it would not be cover your requirements. So you get the 35 gram, absolutely very good, but the rest gonna be wasted or gonna be converted to the fat or used for another things that would not be actually cover your main requirements of the protein. Wow. So you have to be careful about that. If you want to have like 20 gram steaks, 200 gram of the steak, you split it in like 2 different meals or 3, and you can absorb all the proteins inside the meal without waste, and you cover what you require per day. But otherwise, would not be enough for sure.
So this is very interesting, right? Because we don't think about that when we hear just we need to take protein. And so I mean, that's why for me, and I think the world's gotten kind of busy, and we have multiple things going on and lots of projects. And I think that's probably where these protein shakes and protein powders and protein drinks and protein bars have really come in handy, because people can snack on those and not feel like they're having like, 6 meals a day, but they're getting in that protein content. And then we always want to tell people, be careful of the sugars, right? You don't want to have a protein bar that's covered in, oh my gosh, my son has shown, he's like, but mom, it's got protein. And I'm like, there's 45 ingredients in this, and there's glucose and dextrose and maltodextrin and corn syrup solids. And I'm like, dude, this is a chocolate bar with protein. It's not going to happen. So obviously taking care and taking mindful of the kind of protein that you're taking, the company that you're taking it with, making sure that you're enjoying your process. And, as someone who's been gluten-free for 30 years, like, I'm so grateful for the world of, like, when it comes to these kind of shakes or powders or intakes of protein, that they there's lots now that are vegan, lots of vegetarian, lots of it is gluten-free, a lot of it is really conscious of the amount of like type of syrup solids that are in there, so that when you are taking something good for yourself, you're not countering it with something not good for yourself as well. And I think even though in the last couple of years of people that have eaten at home a lot, right? Because, we've not been out as much as often, and we've just gone through, or some countries still going through this kind of health challenge. And the snacking was what everyone was like, oh my gosh, I'm walking by my fridge and it calls my name every time, because we were home so much. And so if you're still there, I mean, I work from home, making sure that the snacks that you are going to, a lot of people gained weight during the pandemic time because of that excess snacking of not good food, right? Just not good food. So knowing that you could have some protein instead. Is there anything else that we need to know before we let these people go out and protein up?
Yes. So when we talk about the proteins, also there is another scientific name, polypeptides. They are also referred to the proteins. They are organic compounds. That means they containing the carbons. So the organic compounds made up amino acids is the definition of the protein. So the main thing is amino acids, not the protein itself, because the protein going to be through the digestion system breakdown to the amino acids. Well, there is like 20 different standard amino acids that build in the body through the blueprint of the in the genome. But the thing is, there is some other essential amino acids for optimum health that the body can't produce itself. So we require to get it with the food. They call it essential amino acids. So especially those that has the athletic targets or goals or planning like yourself, they need to get that extra essential amino acids through the supplements to maximize their requirements for the protein and athletic targets. When it comes to the fitness, athletic performance, as I said, like yourself, the weight management, overall health enhancements, the disease reduction, optimizing the longevity, the role of proteins are undeniable. The proteins involved in almost every structure and also most of the functional components of the body. So as you already asked and I mentioned, the minimum 0.5 gram per pound of the weight for a sedentary senior up to like 1 gram per pound of weight for an athlete, they require to get, and other people in between.
That would be important to note, right? Like everybody can kind of figure that themselves out as they weigh themselves and they have that ratio.
Yes, and the thing is, the protein can be used as an emergency source of the fuel.
Okay.
So if we be in a situation like a survival situation that we don't have access to the food, the body can utilize or break down the muscles to the proteins and utilize those proteins for building the other proteins that body required for optimal health. So we have always make sure that we have enough adequate amount of the glucose or carbohydrates aside that body is a preferred source of the energy for body. So body don't go to break down the proteins because in the specific circumstances, they're going to do that.
Right. It's kind of, didn't we talk about the body starts to eat itself or something?
Exactly.
I can't forget that statement.
Yeah. When you see in the specific conditions or mobile situations, the person lost the muscles, it's the reason. Because like the hormones control all of our body and they need the protein to be able to build those hormones. The glands require those proteins to build those hormones. So when we don't have enough intake, it's going to be happening. And you don't know exactly from where that protein or that which muscle going to be break down. So depends on the source of the muscle. It could be another cause another problems or disease because lack of the functionality of that organ. So this is all important things. So endurance training increase the requirements of the protein because the body required more myoglobin, the oxygen carrier for the muscles. So aerobic enzymes in mitochondria, the red blood cells, all related together to deliver that amount of the oxygen to the muscles. So when you're doing the marathons, you actually need more proteins to be able to make more myoglobins. That is another important thing. Straight training, again, required to increase the amount of the protein. It's the reason why I'm saying that 1 gram per pound is these things that you have to keep in your mind or keep account, keeping in your calculation. So the gender is also important because like women create less nitrogen in physical activity rather than men. So utilizing the oxygen would be less in the women's, like 10 to 20%. So it's another advantage of you compared to me. The energy balance, emphasize increased protein intake. So when you have more energy production or expenditure, like the athletes, again, you're required to take more intake proteins. And the kids and anyone is in the growth required more protein rather than those that are like the seniors or people that has less activities or growth hormones. The quality of the protein is vital also. I'm not talking about the source. It could be the animal source, it could be the plant source, but the health and healing is related to the protein. So consuming adequate amount of the protein during the day, not in one meal, not at once, is important. And you have to consider that 50% of the dietary protein consumed each day would be go to make up the enzymes. Enzymes are so important to facilitate the chemical activities in our body, and especially in the digestion system. And also the neurotransmitters, DNA, RNA, all is built based on the proteins, and is why we are so required to take care of our intake proteins every day. If we have injury, if we have a damage in our body or in tissue, again, repairing those damage, building blocks, we need more proteins. But one of the most important functions are in the metabolic functional efficiency. I mean, the homeostasis or balancing the blood sugar level. So the insulin release are based on the proteins. So I can't say anymore. We can talk days and days about the details of this.
Yeah. I think this has been fantastic. I mean, beyond just that little bit of information that people share when they're talking, or you're reading an exercise magazine, or you're hearing it from knowing why and knowing the role that protein plays in many different aspects, and that there's that, my son who's telling me to do this is, who's 18. I'm surely not 18. I'm not at that stage. I'm a woman. He's a man, different protein. It's really important to know. I think you've covered lots for us to think about. Absolutely lots. I feel just so much more educated every time I talk to you. It actually makes me feel educated and a little guilty. I'm like, oh, okay, so I got to do this, or never mind. I still have guilt from the first conversation on the water. We're getting there. It's like, oh my gosh. But so we so appreciate your expertise, Ramin. You're just you're a thesaurus of nutrition and physical health, and we so appreciate you sharing with us. Because really information is the key, right? Like the right information that has the right explanation. I think that's really important. Information and then explanation, they have to go together when people are making decisions about their health or their wealth or their finances or their relationships or whatever. You need both. So thank you so much for coming on to the show today, our health drop today. And there's so much more to come. And thank you guys for staying tuned and learning more, and share what you know, and share this video as much as you can with people, because that's what good information should be done. So thanks for joining us. Thanks, Ramin, for being with us today. And we'll see you again at the next show.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Bye, guys. Bye.